Shalom to everybody. I would like to actually continue some of the ideas that were expressed before, because the art leads to that. I'm starting with this picture from Dura Europos Synagogue. The story of Purim in Dura Europos Synagogue is the oldest thing that we have. We have it here from the 3rd century. From this synagogue, and I'll give you a background of the synagogue in a minute. And we have it till Rembrandt and others, till 17th century and even 18th century, where non-Jews were very interested in the Megillah and gave it an expression that you'll see ties into their time, but gave them a very good material to deal with questions and issues that were their idea to bring forth through the biblical story. So here is Dura Europos. This is the western wall, the wall that faces Jerusalem, because Dura Europos is in northeast Syria, which was actually the border town of the empire, of the Roman Empire. And it was decorated, and it started to be decorated in the 3rd century, 240 CE, and it was destroyed in 256, meaning the middle of the 3rd century, and was covered by sand until it was miraculously uncovered or discovered in 1932. Now, how did this happen? I want you to notice that here I pointed out the story of the Megillah. Here we have the story of Purim, and it is in the most important place because it's right near the alcove where they would bring the Sefer Torah. This was a synagogue, a gathering place, but when they wanted to pray and daven, this is the place. So here we have it right next to the most important, the focal point of the synagogue, and next to it is the story of King David being ointment being anointed by Shmuel, by the prophet. So the question is, what is known about Dura Europos Synagogue and why this was such an important topic for the synagogue? All you see here, and this is, I'll tell you in a minute how it was saved, but we have many biblical stories here. We have the west wall and the north and southern wall. One wall was not saved, the pictures, but all of these pictures were under sand for all those years, from the 3rd century till the 20th century. And how did that happen? First, let's look at where Dura Europos is. Dura Europos is right here next to Mesopotamia. We are right near the Euphrates, and we could see this is Jerusalem. They were this was after the destruction and of the temple, and they were exiled to this area. And we have here, just to give you an idea, this is Euphrates, and over here we have Antioch. So this is Babylonia, the area that was later the place of the Babylonian Talmud. So, but Dura Europos is a small city, a border town, right next to the Euphrates. Here you can see the Euphrates, and the area that's called Mesopotamia, between the two rivers. And the synagogue was right next to the wall that was around the city. So this is the west wall, and the synagogue is right here. And this is the reason why it survived, because right here, being next to the wall, when the city was attacked by the Persians who were beyond the river and wanted to enter the Roman Empire and to conquer the city, the people that had structures next to the wall were asked to fill them with sand. And so that's how this wall was saved And you can see they thought they would thicken the walls and by this protect the city. But what it didn't protect the city, but it protected the pictures. Normally in architecture, you find fallen columns and everything you have to rebuild. But here, this was saving all these pictures that you see. So here we have the Dura Europos, western and some of the northern wall. And we do have in the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv University, we have a replica of this synagogue. And so it's a very, very important place because it shows us what was the ideas that were important to the Jews of Dura Europos, which was a synagogue that was built by people who were exiled. So here you have the story of Purim, and we're going to go into this story. And what's important again is to see that this panel is the panel here in this very important place. Now, the question here, why was this story chosen to be put in that very, very important place? And with all the important stories about Moses and about the temple and things. And how was it visualized? How did they want to visualize it? And what episode did they choose to show, to visualize it? I mean, they didn't tell the way they don't have Haman hung and they don't have many of the other episodes. And why also various costumes? We'll see that the artists dressed the people in different costumes, meaning Roman garb or a Persian. So we have also wonderful midrashic interpretations that were used in telling this story. And we know that basically at the time, people don't have books. And in order to teach them, pictures were allowed to be done, even though we have the second commandment and they want to show faces. But as time went on, and there was a Christian baptistry, a Baptist place right next to it, so they felt they needed to tell the story with midrashim, to tell the story the way it is in the Torah, but also with all the different midrashim, so that the Christians also use biblical stories, but this was showing the things they didn't know, the midrashic stories. So here we are. We have the episode of Achashverosh right here, and we have, this is the victory, what Dr. Schwartz spoke about, Sarah spoke about the Haman leading Mordechai, and in the middle we have 4 images of people that are raising their hand to show their praise of what's happening. Now, notice that Mordechai is wearing the same type of clothes as Achashverosh, right? They're both Persian clothes. So is Haman and the people here. Yet the group here that represents the people, the Jewish people, raising their hand in praise are in Roman clothes. And this is interesting. And here we also see another figure in Persian clothes that's bringing some sort of a letter to the king. And this rolled document could be the decree that is about to be to bring destruction to the Jewish people. So that we have right here. And we have very interesting way of presenting. So we have the different costume to point out that we have the story of Persia and the story that's now in Roman Empire where they are living. So there is a question why they wanted to stress the different costumes, and also why give this this scene here with the horse. Sarah spoke about the horse and the whole incident here. So we have it as a very important thing. This is really the victory of Mordechai. And what's interesting here also that there are all kinds of writings here in Persia, in Persian. We have many languages. Dura Europos is the city of many cultures. And so here we have a very important way to show this story. And also we have basically the idea that there is a midrashic use interpretation. And the midrashic interpretation is to show the queen. This is Esther. Esther is sitting next to Ahasuerus, and look at the funny crown she has. Her crown is really like a city, walls of a city. And this is in Greek art, because that's still, people here are using the 3rd century Greek and Roman art. The Ticha was the goddess of the city. She had she was protecting the walls of the city. So they used this wall, this crown of a wall of a city, but the reason they use it in this picture is to show that it should be like the crown that Rabbi Akiva gave to his wife Rachel, and to allude to the story that she was so devoted. Rachel married Rabbi Akiva, who was an ignoramus. He was a shepherd. He married her and they fell in love. He married her, and then she encouraged him to go and study Torah for 24 years. And her father disowned her when he saw that she married this man. And later, when he came back, and she was really very poor because she's cut her hair to allow him to have the money to study Torah. And so he gave her a gift of that was a golden diadem that had the shape of Jerusalem, the gold. This is a discovery that was done by Professor Shalom Paul, who really researched this crown. Now, so here we see, you can see the shape, the Queen Esther, and we have another midrashic thing. Notice the throne of Hashverosh. It has 6 steps, and it has a lions and birds here, and this is part of another Jewish tradition that says that Ahasuerus, after the Babylonians destroyed the temple, they took the throne of King Solomon with them, and then it became the throne of King Ahasuerus to show how rich he was, like King Solomon, etc. Again, a midrashic element that was brought into this picture to teach something, to teach the midrashic way of reading the text. And so if we come back to this panel of where we have the 3 scenes, actually, we can see that there is some kind of an effort to reflect on the political situation in Dura Europos. The people there wanted to convey to the non-Jews that here God saved already the Jews from Persians when when there was a meaning at the time, he saved them from Haman and from the decree, and therefore the presence of the Jews is going to bring to the Romans the kind of help it did then. And the people here are showing themselves as Romans because they are very faithful citizen of the city of Dura Europos. So they want to emphasize that. And the idea is that basically when you look at the tradition from the Mishnah in Avot, it says, Rabbi Hanina, Sgan HaKohanim, said, pray for the welfare of the government, since for fear thereof of men would swallow each other alive. Meaning, if you don't have good government where you live and you're not faithful, then you would be destroyed, because there'll be no government and no rulership to protect you. And that's really done till today in every country. In America, you pray for the president. In England, you pray for the queen, etc. So here, the presence of the people here in Roman garb is to emphasize the faithfulness of the Jews that is shown by the story and their tradition, that God helped them, and by the salute of the Jews who are really the Roman citizen. So basically, we see that this story uses the 3 episodes that I showed you to relate a message. But we'll see now that Queen Esther, that in the picture of Dura Europos is sitting very faithful to the king behind him with his the crown on her, she goes through a transformation. Basically, she is a very faithful to her uncle, to a cousin, her uncle, who told her not to say that she's Jewish, and she's really into the gone into the palace, and she like lives in some kind of a bubble, and she's very happy. And so when she hears that Mordechai is wearing sackcloth, she's shook up. What does he do? How can he do this? And she doesn't even ask why he does that. And so basically we can see that the visualization of the transformation that happens to her, which we'll see in a minute, is Jews and non-Jews really were taken by this transformation that go and the results of her behavior after that. Now this picture is a Dutch picture done by de Gelder, who was a student of Rembrandt. And in this picture, we see that Mordechai is telling Esther that what we read, so do not think that if you will keep silence, you will save yourself. You are here to do a job. And this is where she, after he talks to her and tells her that, she goes and she tells him to make the people pray for her for 3 days, etc. And she has a plan. And this is what Sarah also indicated in the text, that she does not accept Mordechai's plan, because that plan seemed to be not politically right. She is not going to go into the king and tell him, do away with your advisor, who is your first man for advice. He wanted her to come and plead with the king, but she has a different plan. And she has a tremendous emotional intelligence. And you could see that in her action. Here we have, I'm showing you a few Hebrew illuminated manuscript, like this is the London Miscellany, and you could see both what happens to her here. The idea was that she should come and plead for the king, but she, because of a plan, she ends up giving orders to the king. She knew how to manipulate this whole procedure, and she does a fabulous job. Here there's another Leipzig Machzor, Jewish Machzor, that shows her coming into the king, even though it was dangerous, she wasn't supposed to, but the Medrash says that she had prophecy. She was like one of the women prophetess that knew what to do. And we have another picture here, Machzor, Woslow, they're all from the 13th century, and here you can see the hanging of the 10 sons and of Haman, and here we see that she is the one to call the shots. The king is behind her, so that she really managed to transfer the whole situation because of her intelligence and her wisdom. And this is the thing that we'll see that most non-Jewish paintings took and were very impressed with. Esther's story became an inspiration to many artists. We're starting with the early Renaissance. In the early Renaissance, here we have this beautiful picture of André de Castagno, who makes, this is Queen Esther, and look at, very beautiful, very smart, and the way Esther, the way the feeling is that those artists, Esther, the heroine of the, she had great beauty, but the artists often wanted to show the wisdom that she has. And here her role of becoming so successful in saving the people, this is the inspiration of the artist. So this fresco that you see was created in 1450. And we know that the scene that you see here, you see King Ahasuerus accepting Queen Esther, putting his golden thing on her. This is a picture that was in the Palazzo Vecchio, which is the old palace in Florence, that became the palace of the Medici family. The Medici family, the wife of Medici, the wife of Cosimo de' Medici, in 1522 to 1562, her name was Eleonora Toledo, and she ordered that picture to be on the ceiling of her bedroom. That picture, because you see, this is was a renovation of the palace, of that Palazzo Vecchio, to their private apartment, and she ordered that. Why? Because she was inspired by the queen. She was a very, very wise woman, and she was helping her husband, Cosimo de' Medici, in running the government, in running the city. And when he would go away, she would run things, and she would bring the voice of the people to her husband. And so this is why she wanted this picture showing Esther being the delegate of the people to the king. Now, and that's what she ended up dying from malaria before she could live in that palace, but that's another story. Now, another non-Jewish story is showing Esther fainting. And this is according to the Catholic Greek addition to the Book of Esther. Now, the Catholics had, they canonized the Bible, and they took the Septuagint version of, which became like an apocrypha. It was not included in the Book of Esther, and this was called the Rest of Esther. The Rest of Esther. Now, here in this picture, you could see a painting of Artemisia Gentileschi, who was a woman artist from the 17th century, very rare thing. And she is describing here Esther coming before the king. And you could see that she's coming before the king and she's fainting. Now, where does that come from? So in this book that was added to the Book of Esther, the Rest of Esther, it tells the following story. Then, having passed through all the doors, she stood before the king, who sat upon his royal throne, clothed with all his robes of majesty, all glittering with gold and precious stones, and he was very dreadful. Then, lifting up his countenance, that shone with majesty, he looked very fiercely upon her, and the queen fell down and was pale and fainted, and she bowed herself upon the head of the maid that went before her. Then God changed the spirit of the king into mildness, who in a fear leaped from his throne and took her in his arms till she came to herself again and comforted her with loving words. So here you see a picture that later we see in other artists. Here is Tintoretto. Tintoretto in this picture also shows the same scene of the queen fainting unto her maidens, and he comes to help her. So this was the miracle that saved her from being hung, because she did something that was forbidden. But for the Catholic, this was really a story that represented Mary, who comes to plead for, to bring the forgiveness of the king, and meaning that this is like the day of judgment, and she is fainting because she's so shook up in this terrible situation. And you could see that this same idea comes again. Here we have another picture of this same thing. So the question is now, here we saw a midrashic, Catholic midrashic story that tells us why this story of Esther was so important, because it has theological significance. Now we also have another non-Jewish Dutch that saw themselves as the new Israel and saw Spain as the bullying tyrant. We know that in the 17th century, there was a 30-year war. And the 30-year war was between the Spanish, who were Catholic, and the Dutch, who were Protestant. And they really, they were just terribly, terribly cruel to them. And the story of Esther and the way this woman was able to overcome the big Haman and the whole empire of Ahasuerus was something that they emulated and thought that this is telling their story. So we have many Dutch painters, like this one is Jan Livens, that show the feast of the two feasts. Here, the first feast.
Shula, just if you can sort of wind up, okay?
Okay, I'll wind up. I just want to show you that here is the first feast is for him, and the second feast is for them. Meaning, we don't know. This is the idea of the jealousy that she instilled in Ahasuerus against Haman. Haman got his honor, and here is this very famous picture of Rembrandt, who shows Esther so glorious and so composed, and she knew exactly how to lead the story and how to overcome, on one hand, the Haman, who was very happy with the honor of being invited to the king, and at the same time, the jealousy of Ahasuerus. So you could see that again, Esther is the one that manipulated this whole story in such a smart way. And here was another Rembrandt painting where Haman is pleading before Esther, and of course Ahasuerus is very angry, and he's pointing as if he's about to kill him. So that basically we see this again and again in many of the Dutch paintings that repeat this story. They're all students of Rembrandt, and so it's very impressive to see how he was able to take the story and to give it the feeling that this is the story of the Dutch, the small nation of the Dutch against the big empire of the Spanish, and with this wisdom of conduct, they were able to overcome. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for taking us through 1,500 years of art.
Right.
And, I saw Rembrandt and his students, but you notice that Rembrandt, in each of his pictures, he puts Esther in the spotlight. The light is on her. He's the
right.
center of the story.
And that's why it's the Book of Esther.
Right. Well, that's why Rembrandt was the genius.
He was, and he loved the Jews. He lived in the Jewish
absolutely.
section.
I have
Yes.
a number of books here on Rembrandt and the Jews.
Right,
But
right.
Shula, thank you very, very much. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I'd like to thank all of our lecturers.